This is part 5 of the design process, design development. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty about the process of design. So after the designer has met with you and given you a contract and you signed the contract and paid a deposit, the designer will take anywhere from a 10 to 20, 30% deposit. The designer will either come out and measure your site or have someone come out and do it, or better yet, if you already have an existing site plan of your house, which most people tend not to, then you can give that to the designer, and that will save you some cost. So once the designer has thoroughly measured the site, the designer will draw up a site plan. Now, this site plan will be very specifically detailed. It'll show the exact width of your front door, the exact width of a planting area, your driveway, and whatever other elements are there. The designer will also do a site analysis of your yard. This does not involve you per se, and what that means is the designer will come out and study your yard. What is your soil like? What areas of your garden gets most sun, most shade? Do you have any issues with your yard, like for example gophers or rabbits, or maybe your yard has a slight slope that needs to be taken into account? Maybe it's a steep slope. Maybe there's some sort of utility in your yard that can't be removed, that has to be worked around. Maybe there's existing paths and whatnot that you're keeping that your designer needs to note in the analysis. And this is just for the designer to get a sense of what's currently going on in your yard. How well does your soil drain? These are all things that your designer will make note of, because this will all affect how he or she can design the garden. Now, once the designer has done the site analysis and taken all that accountability, what the designer should do, and most do as I do, is read all your guidelines. So if you have an HOA, they will read thoroughly through the HOA guidelines, line by line. Because maybe your HOA has a certain rule. For example, some HOAs will allow you to extend your driveway, but will tell you you can only extend it 2 feet on either side. That's something that's important to know if you intend to extend your driveway. Because if you tell the designer, I want to add an extra 10 feet this way to my driveway, your designer can tell you, sorry, your HOA doesn't allow it, and you have to comply with the HOA. And your designer, when whatever they design, will have to comply with the HOA. And usually, it's best when you meet with a designer, and once you've hired the designer, to just give them a copy of your CC&Rs, specifically the parts that relate to landscape design. And they'll read it, go over it. If there's anything that they see on there that's different than what you're looking for, they'll let you know, and they'll come up with some sort of alternative that suits best and works for everyone involved. So now let's talk about the concept drawings. Typically, designers will create 1, maybe 2, at the minimum 2 concept drawings. Now, these drawings will be about what is possible in your landscape, depending on what's already there that you're intending to keep, what it is that you want to achieve with this garden, what it is that your designer has as vision for your garden, what will realistically work for the space, and more importantly, what will realistically work based on your budget. Because that's the biggest thing. You can have a garden, put in a pool, put in a custom barbecue, put in a custom fire pit, but can you afford all that at once? For most people, not so much, and most people don't even have the space to have a fancy pool. So your designer will take everything into account. Now, these concept drawings will also show where the proposed plans are. Where are the proposed hard surface materials and paths? And what are those materials? Maybe your designer thinks it would work best to have flagstone. Maybe you've got brick already at your house, your fireplace is brick, and the exterior has brick, and your designer might propose to mimic some of that brick in the landscape. And maybe you like a certain color, and your designer proposes to have a swath of meandering plants in mass in that color. There's a whole slew of different options, and this is also why you hire a professional designer. Because who has time? Who has time to think about all these options and alternatives? Let someone else worry about it for you so you can be busy enjoying your life. So when the designer creates these concept drawings, he or she will meet with you, probably at your house. And you thoroughly go over these concepts. You may pick them up, take them outside, and discuss them as you're outside. And the cool part is this is where you get to voice your opinion. You can say, oh, I really like that one concept. Or, I kind of like this, but I also kind of like this. So can we do a mixture of both? Sometimes you can. And this is where you get a sense of what will work in your space. And the designer will show you photographs and pictures of different plants and materials. And if it's possible, the designer will actually bring samples of materials. Maybe you want to use flagstone, and the designer might bring samples of different flagstones to use. But this is the time for you to get a great idea of what will work in your landscape. What is possible for your garden. Now, these concept designs that you see here over to the side are ones that I did for a homeowner in the city of Orange. So, the yard used to be completely grass, and she wanted the grass gone and replaced with drought-tolerant California native plants. She also wanted a path to get to the front door and to get to the side gate where she wheels the trash cans out. Now, there was 2 issues. The first issue was that the path had to be wider than standard. Usually standard, the path is sufficient to be 4 feet wide. Now in this case, we made it about 6-7 feet wide. Now, the reason why we did that is because her husband uses a walker. He can't walk very well. So we had to make the path wide enough so that if he's walking with a walker, she's able to walk beside him in case he needs help. Now, we decided to use flagstone because it was an organic, non-square material that she really liked. And the specific color of flagstone that we used was one, I don't recall the name of it, that she really liked the color of. And as you can see in the photos, she even mimicked the house color to coordinate well with the flagstone. But now we did 2 things in this design. When we laid out the flagstone, at the bottom of the steps and everywhere else at the bottom, we soft set the flagstone so that when it gets wet, water still permeates through the landscape. But at the top, where the stairs are and up above, we set them in mortar because that area, being close to the house, needed to be very stable and permanent. This is an option of what you could do with your landscape. These are 2 concept ideas for this specific garden. Of course, your garden might be different, but again, that's why you hire a professional who will tell you what will work in your space. You don't have to do all that fancy hours and hours of time-suck research going into the black hole of, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed.